With the power to bring people together or just help us escape the world, gaming is more than just a game. So join me, Ziggy Chris, as I speak to developers, content creators, and gamers like you and me to discover how each of us was saved by gaming. Welcome everyone to Saved by Gaming. I, as always, am Ziggy Chris, and with me today is someone right on niche for us, because when life gave Imran Yusuf a continued screen, he turned it into comedy gold. This gaming-obsessed funny man didn't just find salvation in Street Fighter, he's now paying it forward through Games Aid, proving controllers can be lifelines. So from using fighting game comebacks as therapy to hosting charity events that actually save lives, Imran's story is what this show is all about. So welcome in, Imran Yusuf. Hello.
Hello, thank you very much for having me. This is exciting. I'm glad that the gaming community is building all these amazing resources for gamers. We have created a culture. The games industry and gamers have co-created a culture, and like how we can relate to each other. People from different walks of life, different parts of the world can relate to each other over video games in deep and meaningful ways and bond incredible friendships. And I'm glad that you're doing this and that there's a whole gaming community out there.
Yeah, thank you. I was thrilled when you got back to me, and I did laugh when your very first email back had a Street Fighter reference in it, because like that's bang on niche. And as you mentioned about bringing people together, people will know that listen to my first episode. I spoke about one of my life-saving moments was connecting with people through World of Warcraft years ago. And so the community, chatting with people thousands of miles away that didn't know me but were able to connect with me, and then meeting those people in life and being able to get those virtual hugs that become real hugs, you know, all that kind of stuff is like just resonated through me ever since. And that's what kind of spawned this conversation with you all these years later. So it's great.
Amazing. You never know where life is going to take you. You don't know what the great games designer in the sky has planned for you. But, you know, when you face it with all the skills that you've learned in life and press continue all the way to the end.
Exactly. So for you yourself, because you've had quite a journey yourself, obviously, we spoke earlier about with the fact we're the same age. I grew up with the same games as you, so I totally get a lot of the references that you drop in. But when you hear Saved by Gaming for yourself, in terms of your own journey leading up to working in games and then into comedy and so on, what does that mean for you? Is there any thoughts in your past that you think, actually, I was saved by gaming at that point, or I had a moment where maybe gaming saved me from something else?
Well, when I think of that term, it's quite an interesting term you've come up there. It's saved by gaming. I can think of a number of different instances where that term is entirely relevant to my life. I think I've been playing games since I was a kid. My brother had a ZX Spectrum 81, which, if I may, just very quickly, Mike Daly of Lemmings and Grand Theft Auto fame gifted me that, and he signed it as well. He gifted me that.
That brings back flashbacks, because we had one of those in my house growing up. I wish we still had it. And this video will be on YouTube and everywhere else if you want to go and see the video that Imran is holding up the Spectrum.
Yeah, so this is the very first ZX Spectrum. Yeah, Sinclair ZX Spectrum. That's the very first one we had. I was a kid. I barely remember it, but this is the first thing I played video games on, or computer games specifically, and I loved playing the games. And then later, my uncle gave me his Commodore 64, and I played some games on that. But it's when I got my NES, when I got my 8-bit NES, and we got Super Mario Brothers, and I heard do 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 do. That moment, my life changed. I went, I'm going to grow up and I'm going to make these. Like, I want to work in this thing. Whatever this thing is, I want to be part of it. And I became Nintendo obsessed. Hence the Marios, right? I was a Nintendo fanboy. We also had a Mega Drive. That was my brother's, and we had rivalry in the house. Because back in the day, you remember, it was Nintendo versus Sega, right?
I've read Star Wars and all that stuff, yeah.
But yeah, that was I think then suddenly video games were like, right, video games have claimed me, and that's what I wanted to do. But as you can imagine, and I'm hazarding a guess, parents of that era and people in that era, or the authoritarians in that era, like, video games are bad, they're addictive, they're bad, it's a waste of time, it's a waste of money, not realizing it was going to become bigger than Hollywood, and it was going to inspire a whole generation of artists and coders and designers and anyone and everyone else that's part of the games industry, marketeers, you name it, technologists. Is that a thing? A technologist?
We're making it a thing,
right? And yeah, we're making it a thing. Technologist. We are all technologists now. So it was incredible. It was very, very important. However, school didn't have a place. I remember being in school and going, oh, what do you want to do when you leave school? And I went, I want to be a video games designer. And I remember the look on the career advisor's face. Like, she was just like, I don't know what that is. Like, there's no such thing as that. And I thought, maybe you want to be a graphic designer. And all I did throughout high school, I failed all my GCSEs. I just played video games. I found high school awful. But and then what happened in my teens, after school, people used to try and mug me. Other boys would try and mug me because I looked weak. Young Asian guy, family probably owns a shop. We did, right? So, do you know what I mean? I was a target for muggers. A friend of mine, he was doing karate. And I was like, I want to do that too. And so I started. And then suddenly, fortunately, the gun culture that I'd kind of had a look at was shunned away. And I took up martial arts. And that changed the kind of person that I would become. It was about self-defense and honor and not about weapons and trying to look hard and all of this. So that was incredible, and I loved. I did karate for a few years, and I got to the belt before black, and I was a promising martial artist, and then I got into the games industry. Right, I dropped out of university. I got pushed out of university, joined the games industry through synchronicity, providence, luck, coincidence, whatever you call it. All of those words are relevant, but I got a job wasn't advertised. I was in the right place at the right time, and I got hired by a guy who just understood me. And I got a job at Midway Games, and suddenly now I'm making money and I'm doing well, and it put me into a professional environment, and I had to learn how to behave in a professional environment very quickly, which I think was very, very good for me at a young age.
So if it wasn't for that one moment, then you might not have ever picked up martial arts, and then your journey might have been totally different.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, ever since before Street Fighter 2, I was always into martial arts.
Yeah. For anyone who watches the video version of this podcast, you'll notice that due to the magic of editing, Imran's background has now changed.
It has.
Or it could just be because I finally went in and stole all of his Mario figures and his Spectrum and everything else. So you can guess as to which one of those two things actually happened.
Indeed.
Yeah. So all of that made you realize, obviously, that you wanted to be in games. You mentioned about how that kind of kicked off, and you've kind of managed to work your way into games, and you had dreams of being the next Miyamoto. Obviously, I've heard you reference that before. Yeah, we've all been there. And that obviously, for whatever reason, didn't pan out. But how did growing up with games impact changing into comic life? Like, what happened there? And has the skills that you learned from gaming, how did that translate to both your comedy and working life or anything else? Whether it's reading opponents, handling losses, anything you've taken from those traumatic moments when you can't beat the final boss?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of crossover here. Like, I was always a bit of a show off. Like, I was the kid who was always trying to draw attention, a bit of the class clown, the office joker, because I was like, hey, look at me. I've been that kid growing up. And when I was a teenager, I discovered stand-up comedy. I discovered the Comedy Store, effectively. They had a TV show at midnight on the old Paramount Comedy Channel before it became Comedy Central. And I was like, man, that's what I want to do. I want to be telling jokes and having creative control and having all the glory, and so having spent all that time in the games industry, I realized that my Miyamoto moment just wasn't seemingly coming my way, because first I started off at Midway Games, which was great, but they didn't have anywhere for me to go. They didn't have much for me to do other than the admin of a publishing company. And then I ended up being a games tester, kind of moving backwards in scope of responsibility and definitely in pay. But what I did, but comedy was always there. Like, it was always like, I want to go do comedy. And so I started doing open spots and building my comedy skills and comedy career. But it was hard. It was really difficult. But what I found is that in the games industry taught me, particularly Midway Games, taught me to be professional. This is professional conduct, how you can write professional emails. This is the professional kind of conduct when dealing with different members of staff and different companies and different stuff. If you're dealing with people in America, dealing with a contractor, a localization company, or dealing with these people, there's nuances of knowing how to manage people and leverage what you need to leverage in order to get the job done. Because when I came to show business, it was the Wild West by comparison, right? Show business wasn't as professional and was behind in many ways in terms of professional conduct and getting things done correctly. But comedy, the great thing about comedy was you go up on stage, and if you make people laugh, you have 100% creative control, and you get all the glory and you get all the money. And you can't compete with that. It's immediate. You go up on stage, you made people laugh, they love you, they've paid you, you're on your way. Whereas if I wanted to be a games designer, I would have had to hang around for a long time. I ended up at Kuju, who made Battalion Wars 2 for the Nintendo Wii, And that's when I'm in the development studio with coders, the designers, and the artists. And I was like, right, this is how I'm going to make my leap out of QA into the design team. But it just wasn't going to happen, and it was very hard. Like Battalion Wars 2 was a very difficult project. It was a lot of overtime, a lot. And I just kind of sensed, hey man, it's just not happening here. And comedy was like, you tell a joke, people laugh. It's immediate. It's immediate. You walk off stage, you get paid. It's
Yeah.
immediate.
Yeah, it's a difficult leap. I worked briefly in QA. I worked as a games tester for Microsoft for a period on the Connect Sports project on that.
Oh right, yeah.
So yeah, I understand that, but yeah, the leap is, and people get churned out all the time because it comes in waves, and
Yeah.
once the project's over, it's over, all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
it is difficult. But then thriving on the comic success and building on that, you've then used that to do so many good things. So what made, for those that don't know, you're a patron of Games Aid, and you do an event every year called Stand Up for Games Aid.
Yes.
What brought that into existence? Like, what made you transition from just doing comedy to thinking I'm going to help give birth to this event and get involved with this and Games Aid itself? Like, what made that happen? Because I know you talk about charity and things, but it's one thing to actually say it, it's another thing to put it into practice.
Yeah, I'm glad you've asked this question because it allows me to rewind back into what happened in the games industry in order for this to happen. So
Okay.
I was at, after I'd fallen on my ass, like I used to be an assistant producer at Midway Games. I was on good money. I felt important. And then I was like, I'm going to take time off and I'm going to become a comedian. But I didn't become a comedian overnight. It was, in my head, I thought I was Chris Rock. But in reality, like, I didn't understand how to actually do when you are orchestrating an audience in a room, that just takes time. Some people have naturally got it very quickly. I didn't quite have it. I thought I was better than I really was. So it was a humbling experience. So I lost a lot of money. I couldn't get back into the games industry at the same at the same salary or the same position. So I ended up in QA. I was at IDOS, and then I ended up at Sega. And I was going through a depression because, my career's gone backwards. I've lost all the money that I saved. I don't have the leverage that I used to have. Everything's going wrong. Like I can't get anything to work in my life, right? And I'm falling into a depression. And whilst I'm at work, I had an appraisal, and I'll never forget this. I've actually spoken to him, my supervisor. I spoke to my supervisor, I think a couple of years ago, and I thanked him for doing this. I was having an appraisal, and my supervisor went, right, Imran, since you've had your last appraisal, you've improved a lot. This has improved, this has improved, this has improved. And I went, hey, man, I just got to tell you the truth. I'm having a real hard time, and I've not done any work for the last week. In fact, I've been on MSN Messenger talking to friends, and I'm basically, leaning on the guy that I'm training to do all my work, right? I just told him this bit, and he just went, wow, okay, well, we're going to have to stop the meeting here because there's no point doing an appraisal. Go back to your desk and we'll talk about this later. And I walked back to my desk, and there was this magic moment. My bum touched the seat, and I was like, I'm going to go on pilgrimage. I need to go to the Middle East, and I need to go to the Holy Lands, as they're supposedly called. I need to have this spiritual moment, and that can only happen through the medium of my particular religion and my particular culture and tradition. So I was like, that's what I'm going to go and do. And later on, my supervisor, he took me out of work. He took me into the meeting room. And I'm really grateful that he did this. Marlon Grant is his name. And basically, I should be working, and he's just taken me out. He's just taken me off the QA floor, and he's going, let's have a chat. Let's just have a chat. Tell me what's going on. And I told him, hey, man, I'm having a real hard time. Everything's gone wrong. I've lost money, and I can't get anything to work, and I was hoping this, etc. And instead of being my supervisor, instead of being a senior, he was just a friend, and he listened to me, and he gave me a space to just, for me not just to be a drone at work, for me to be a hurting person at work. He just allowed me to have the space, and he didn't make it about the job. He didn't make it about your productivity or you've not done your work and etc. 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 He's just like, this is life and anything's possible, man. Anything's possible for you. You can do anything, and you're just going through a hard time. But I forget the specifics, but I'm just grateful that he gave me the space to be in pain. And that was a healing moment, I think. And then whilst I was at Sega, so before Games Aid, there was a charity, the games industry charity was called the Entertainment Software Charity, ESC. And I basically went, I need to figure out, in order for me to heal with all the troubles that I'm going through, there are people who and their lives are far worse than mine, right? There are people who would love to have my problems. They would love to be as broke as I am and love to feel as rubbish as I feel, because I'm actually doing better than they are in the grand scheme of things. So perhaps in order for me to fix things, I need to help people. I need to find those that I can help, because I'm actually in a position of some privilege. I work in the games industry. I'm a comedian. What can I do? And so I contacted the ESC and I was like, look, I'd love to do like a project. And I had a chat with Mark Strawn, his name was. I met him, we had a chat about how I could get involved, but I was a nobody in the games industry and I was nobody in comedy as well. I wrote a letter, I've still got the letter somewhere, to the head of HR at Sega going, I want to raise enough money and build like a children's ward at Great Ormond Street Hospital or something like that. And they're like, right, Imran, well, this is the kind of money that we have to give to charity each year. We like to spread it out to smaller charities, because if you give 10 grand to Great Ormond Street, it'll pay for their phone bill or something like that. You know, like, we want to do something that's measurably like we've impacted somebody's life directly, something at that effect. So I'm a nobody and there's nothing I can do. And that was just there. Like one day through the games industry, I'll do something. And then years later, I've done better in comedy. I've gone to Edinburgh. I've been nominated. I've ended up on television. Like I've got some heat on me, and I'm like, now I can do something. So I contact GamesAid. I discover that ESC is no more, and there's a thing called GamesAid. So I contact them and go, look, I'm a stand-up comedian. I would love to do a fundraiser for GamesAid, because you know I used to work in the games industry, and this is how I want to give back. And that to my face, they went, okay, we'll do it. But they told me that behind the scenes, they're like, what a stupid idea. No one's going to go to it, right? And then I speak to the Comedy Store, and the Comedy Store is my favorite. The Comedy Store is like the Nintendo of comedy. It is the place that set the standard, right? So, and they're like, okay, Imran, well, we don't know about this because we've never worked in the games industry, but you know, you've got a bit of pull on you, so let's do it. So I contact friends and we put on a show. It sells out. The show sells out. We raised tons of money for GamesAid. They're really happy. They asked me to become a patron, and then we've been doing it for 13 years. And so 13 years at the Comedy Store, 5 years in Brighton. This is the second year it'll be up north as well. So I'm like, wow, here we are. Like now, after I'm gone, GamesAid, Stand Up for GamesAid will continue.
Yep.
The world of comedy and the world of video games has a dynamic at work now, where they can go, all right, we know how to book comedians and put on shows, and comedy will always, the world of comedy and the world of video games will always come together to do this great work. And I'm like, yay!
Nice.
Made that happen.
And that is amazing. Do you have any examples you can give of where that has led to making an impact, the money that is raised through Stand Up for GamesAid? I
mean, if you could just go on YouTube and see videos of how Stand Up for GamesAid, or GamesAid in particular, have impacted different charities. We did a day where we got some of the charities to meet at a location. We did interviews with how the money has impacted them and the quality of life that those who receive help from those charities, how they benefit from the money that's been raised by GamesAid, and the awareness as well. We've also, last year, I met with Dr. Gary Coleman from Game Therapy, and they use Dungeons and Dragons and tabletop games to help people with various forms of mental illness, like veterans with PTSD, deal with the issues that they're going through. I got to meet Leon Brown from Action for Kids. Action for Kids helps children and young people who otherwise will not be able to live independent lives with the devices that they need to do that. So for Leon, it's a wheelchair that allows him to go around town and be independent. Like he can go around the city and visit places all on his own without assistance from anybody. Where kids who come from underprivileged or at risk, given access, it's called Access Sport. Access Sport allows them to get involved in local sports teams so they can learn teamwork and obviously respect and personal skills that you'll need to get by in life, rather than to get involved in the bad elements in their environment. They're like, no, I'm part of a sports team, I've got things to do. Things like that. I'm also trying to meet, so what I'm doing, I'm trying to continue to meet with some of these charities, because it's important for us to exhibit and to illustrate the impact the money that we're raising has on the lives of people, because that's the real human part. So, you know, the world, society is a word to describe a group of people living together, and how we take care of those of us who are the most vulnerable and need help in order to live life at their highest potential is a mark of just how great our society is, and how we ourselves are reaching our higher potential of compassion as well. So you can find out, if you just put in Games Aid, and there's no end of videos that you can find out about how they're helping the different charities that they're helping.
Yeah, we'll make sure the links to Games Aid and everything are in the description for the episode as well, so make it easier for everyone to get there. And you touched on one of the things I was going to ask, which was how do you make sure that the balance of fun, like the fun of gaming with the seriousness of the causes that you're supporting in those events, like how do you balance that, or how do you make sure that the message is still carried across despite the fact it's a comedy event, if that makes sense?
So everyone who comes to Stand Up for Games Aid knows that it's called Stand Up for Games Aid. It's not like, hey guys, it's just a comedy show. It's like, did you know that Games Aid is a charity run by the games industry that raises money for children and disadvantaged and disabled children and young people, and helps these kinds of charities, does all this good stuff. And as a result, we do a comedy show for them at the Comedy Store in London and at the Comedia in Brighton, and you can come and visit this show. And then the comedians turn up and we do a show. The little tricky bit is that, see, in a professional environment such as the video games industry or any office environment, it's prudent not to talk about sex, politics and religion, because you're there to do work, and those three subjects can suddenly take you down a route of arguments, right? There's no end to it, but you're there to do the job, right? And so when you're at a comedy club, well, you can talk about anything you want. And so the comedians can broach the topics like sex, politics, and religion quite easily. But I always prime the comedians and remind them, hey guys, it's not a corporate gig, but just be aware that the people in here work together, and certain things like, excess filth or, really brutal politics might not be the most favorable thing for you to do, but just do what you want to do. Just be aware that that's what the audience is like. It's not a regular weekend at the Comedy Store. It's close, but it's not the regular weekend. And then weirdly, everybody just loves it, because what I love about when I book a comedy show, I book people who are good comedians, but are also good backstage, right? They know we're here to help a charity. This is what it involves. This is the kind of material we're going to do because we want to create a good vibe. Right? Whereas opposed to some nights at a comedy club, it depends on what kind of audience you have. You can go down darker routes, and sometimes the audiences want that. Sometimes they don't, right? So it's very important of who you book, and I'm very mindful of who I book, because you want to work with good people who are going to leave the audience on a high.
Yeah, no, that's well said. It makes perfect sense. On a lighter note, though, thinking from what we've spoken about in terms of how like games have saved you or saved us, like that's the theme, and then Games Aid a little bit. But for someone who's listening in their own like health bar flashing red moment now, if you're Dr. Imran Yusuf, games doctor, what would you prescribe them? What game would you prescribe for someone to get them through a tough time?
Well, I'll give you an example of what happened to me. This is something I didn't mention. I'm going to give a shout out to my friend Shiva Alari, who works at Sony. He works for PlayStation. We were working at Sega together. And when I was going through that hard time that I described earlier, when I was going through that depression when I was at work, and, I told my supervisor, Marlon Grant, that, I'm having a hard time, Shiva lent me a box set of anime of Hajime no Ippo, which I think in English is called Fighting Spirit. I think it's the boxing anime. Okay. Watching anime helped me improve my emotional well-being massively. Doctors should just be like, you don't need drugs, just get on anime. Get on Naruto, right? Get on Hajime no Ippo, Dragon Ball Z. Bare minimum, you need those three. Watch those things. If you're having a hard time, watch anime. It's so good for you. It will lift your spirits. It will make you believe in the greater potential of your own life. The Japanese have just figured out a magic way of inspiring people in a way that nobody else does. That, and in terms of gaming, before I mention Shenmue.
Yeah. I had a Dreamcast, so Shenmue lives with me daily.
Yeah. So before I mention Shenmue, gaming. So when I was at Sega at that time, Mario Kart had come out on the DS, and we used to do 8-player battles. So one guy had it. My friend Zamir Bandali, he had it. He got it on import, and the rest of us did download play. And during every break, we'd all jump in, and there'd be more people than there were slots. Communal gaming with other gamers was very, very important for me. Like DS download, like, even though we've got our own screens, but we're all in the same place together. That was really important. And then, playing games with friends online on Xbox Live. So anime, communal gaming, and then let's get to Shenmue. I mean, it might not be Shenmue for you. It was Shenmue for me. Shenmue 1 and 2 are great. I don't know what happened with the third one, but Shenmue 1 and 2, you go on that journey. You are Ryo Hazuki, an 18-year-old Japanese boy who does Hazuki Jiu-Jitsu and whose father has just been murdered in his town. And it's a very, you believe it. You're just like, you're in that environment and you believe it. It's so well polished and so well done. Maybe it looks a bit aged now, but there's a polish on it as well. There's just a polish on it that you can't get away from. Shenmue is a good, nice adventure. It's like watching your favorite drama, but you're playing it. You're playing the video game, the drama.
Yeah, I remember it so well, and just spending ages in like discovering I can go and play an arcade game or just drive a forklift truck around and do random things. So I was like, this is amazing.
And so yeah, anime, communal gaming with your mates, and Shenmue is what I'd recommend.
No, that's a great list. And communal gaming. Sorry, yes, it's still great online, but there is something great about that in-person experience, like you mentioned. I mean, going back or gathered around one CRTV playing GoldenEye with 4 people, and you can see each other's screen and try and work out where they are, and it's just all of that joy. But even then, Halo, my friends and I would do Halo LAN parties growing up. We get all our old Xboxes together and fill the lounge with like TVs and Xboxes and like have massive Halo LAN parties. All that stuff was great, and so I think some of that is lost now with the all online. I love online gaming, but there's an element of that is lost. That's just the nostalgia in me. There you go.
Yeah, you know what? I think now I'm not in the games industry. I think we've all just gotten older. When I was in the games industry, when we were in our 20s with other people who are like me, we all brought our handhelds with us. We'd all come to work with our DSs because we knew that we were going to play together. Now, I'm an adult. I'm 45 years old. Friends are married, gotten away, and I don't have that communal gaming thing. And often, I'll take my Switch with me sometimes to comedy clubs. To play on the train or play when I've got a moment. But then weirdly, what I find is, if you're backstage and you're playing a game and the other people around you aren't gamers, it's just they can be a bit crappy to you. I wasn't doing playing games, and I'm like, you don't realise. I think gaming there's a stigma around gaming, or that it's for nerds and it's for geeks. But it's like, no, it's art. This is art. If you are a gamer, you are a connoisseur of technology and of art, right? And if you like it the way you like it, and it's just, I own it, man. Like, I'm a gamer, man. Like, I don't care what anybody. I love having my Switch on me, and I'm filming at the moment. I'm filming in Northern Ireland. When I say not at this second, I'm flying out to Belfast every week or so because we're filming on a BBC show, and I take my Switch with me. I try to read as well. It's important to read, right? So hence you saw my library earlier. So between reading and playing video games, I think the Switch is really good for that. You can play the game that you'd usually play on your television, but in your hands. I haven't picked up my Switch 2 yet. I need to pick that up.
That was going to be my question. Are you on Switch 2 yet? But so because people will be wondering, what are you currently playing on Switch? Just to quickly summarize that.
Oh, right now on my Switch, I'm playing Paper Mario, N64 version because I never played it.
Nice. Okay. Yeah.
So, America Captain Tsubasa. Graphically looks amazing, and I was quite interested. I've just got the demo.
Nice. Very nice.
To see what that's about. And but I'm looking forward to getting my Switch 2 in the next. I think maybe I was going to wait until Metroid Prime 4 comes out.
Yeah, that makes sense. When you mentioned about gamers are kind of built for technology, if you like, we are, I want to say, almost ahead of the curve. I was speaking to an accessibility consultant last week, and they were saying how, that, and I agreed with them full-heartedly, that we were kind of prepared for COVID, like the pandemic, because we already had that online connection with people, whether the online gaming became such a huge part of that moment when you're all locked away, being able to still connect with your friends, and it almost continued unadulterated, like just felt like it was the same. You could still connect with people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, I started Twitch streaming. I was playing games online with some of I'm still in touch with the mates that I made in video games. We have a WhatsApp group, right? We were like, hey man, let's jump on and play Among Us. Right, let's jump on and play this, and we'd Twitch stream, and we'd argue and scream at each other and laugh, and it brought us together. We couldn't see each other, we've not seen each other in years, but that gamer connection, is deep, and we would just have a great laugh playing together, accusing each other of you're the imposter. Yeah, we were. I think if you were online savvy, it was quite easy. You not only can you talk to people, but you can play video games with them. That was a saving grace. And I think if there's anyone who's, if you've got problems with socializing and finding a safe, welcoming place, well, any environment will have danger in it. That's just life. But gaming is a great thing to get involved in, man. It's you know, I know gamers who are older than me. Like it's weird. It was seen as a kids thing, but we are the kids that became adults. I'm still gaming, man. I still love it, and I know people older than me. My friend Joel Sanders, who's a comedian, he's got a show on Channel 4 at the moment. He was a teacher at a high school where I live. He's a gamer, so I was like, wow, you know, had he been my teacher, he would have been somebody I could have spoke video games about. Like, imagine that. Imagine in the 90s going to school and talking to your teacher about video games in the way that you talk to your friends.
Yeah, it's a very different time, and I keep telling people that our generation, if you like you said, we're the ones that grew up with games and kind of grew with them. And I keep saying that old age people's homes will be very different in a few years' time because they're going to be full of consoles. They'll be full of consoles. Instead of days knitting, people are going to be there with their, you know, Switch or whatever else it is, playing games.
And you know what? It's gonna have a lot of young healthcare assistants being traumatized every time they get their asses kicked on Mario Kart, because they're just not gonna have it. It's all muscle memory for us.
Yeah,
man.
yeah, exactly.
Power sliding and all of this, and these kids they're not gonna be ready for it. You're gonna have old people's homes are gonna be full of old people who are having a great time, and young people going, I just can't take a round off him in Street Fighter. I just can't do it.
Yeah, that was me when I was younger. My brother's 7 years older than me, and I was like the young kid that just whooped him and all his bigger friends on Street Fighter all the time. Well, you know, the one that just annoys everyone. That was me. All right, so you mentioned a million games, not quite a million, but I'm exaggerating for drama. If you could only play one game for the rest of your life, though, what would it be?
Oh my God. One game for the rest of my... I don't think I can really answer that, man. I'm just trying to think... One game... You only get one game and you have to play it for the rest of your life. Good Lord. I don't...
Or is life just over?
For some reason, I'm erring towards Mario 64 just because you can... It's like a little digital playground. You know, you just run around and... So often, you know, I'd play Mario 64 not even to complete anything, just to run around and fly and jump off stuff and use it as a little parkour thing. I think that's the closest thing I could give you an example for. But you know what? Maybe Shenmue, because you can play it multiple times, and you know there's so much to discover, so many things that are off the beaten track.
Yeah. That
you can go and enjoy. So somewhere between Mario 64 and Shenmue, I think.
Yeah, which would be an interesting merging as well of the two.
Yeah. I mean, I hope we get another Shenmue, or one that isn't rushed the way that Shenmue 3 was, because it's a great story. And I love the original engine. I don't think they should have changed the original engine. They should have kept it.
I don't know if it's now, considering everything you've said about the third one, is a pile of shame or not. As much as I love the originals, I never got to Shenmue 3 eventually with all the drama, so I've yet to pick it up.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, should I bother? Possibly not by the sound of it.
Not really. Not really. It looks beautiful, but the game has definitely been rushed. Like almost like no other game I've seen. Like really right. You're like, oh right, they've obviously just ran out of time in designing this, and they've just thrown loads of crap at the wall, and it feels more on rails than the original two, which felt truly like they were. Oh right, it's kind of open. But I guess there's a lesson to be learned from this of, fans wanted it for so long, but they broke away from the thing that made it so compelling. And just because they had, a PlayStation 4 to play with, they had an incredibly powerful machine to play with. And I was like, sometimes less is more. And working within the constraints of your technology is how you really make things impactful. Like I often think, so today, digital filmmaking, there's something sterile when you're watching the screen. There's something sterile about it. And when you go and watch an old film like Jaws, even though I never think about how fake the shark is, because I'm just in the world, man. I'm in the world. I'm in the drama. I'm in the thrill, right? You don't care about what the shark looks like, really. It's not awful. I mean, it's not great, but then I think it would have been made worse if somebody makes like a digital restoration with the CG shark. I think it would be ruined.
Totally, yeah. I mean, don't get me started on that, because again, this will be a separate movie podcast, because you're gonna send me off on absolute rants, absolute rants about that one.
Yeah.
So, lastly, then, you've mentioned some amazing names today. And you met so many interesting people, both from the charity perspective and within your games work and everything, and your comedy work. But whose saved by gaming story would you like to hear? Is there anyone, whether you've met them or not, it could be someone you haven't even yet met, that you think, actually, I bet they've got a great saved story?
There's quite a few. There's a number of people I think you should talk to. Number one, my old boss who gave me my break in the games industry, Metro Mustafa. So Metro was the Nintendo Challenger champion in the 90s. So you would have read about him in NMS,
Okay.
Nintendo Magazine System, right? So he came from an estate. It was really rough. He got really good at Street Fighter 2 and at Mario Kart. And he won the Nintendo Challenger Championship. So he became Metro Mustafa. And then after with Nintendo, he went on to Ubisoft. And then he got a job, eventually ended up at Midway. Before that, before he was Nintendo Challenger Champion, he worked at Hamleys. And he worked in the gaming section and he would turn up every day. And before the shop opened, he would complete Street Fighter 2 on the hardest setting. So then the screen would go blue. You'd get the blue background, right? And he used to practice. He played so much Street Fighter 2, and that's how he became Nintendo Challenger Champion later down the line. And that's how he got into gaming. But he came from an estate. He came from a very, very difficult upbringing, from what he's told me. But he made it to the games industry, and through him, I learnt professional conduct. So he is now an award-winning tennis coach with an amazing business. But if you had to go after one person, definitely Metro Mustafa. His story would be incredible.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that. Imran, it's been amazing talking to you today. I've really enjoyed it. And
Thank you. I'm sad that it's come to an end. I could go on.
yeah, honestly, as I said to you before we even hit record, there's so many things I could just talk to you about, I'm sure, just from I don't know, maybe it's a mid-40s thing, just the nostalgia aspect of it all, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But thank you for sharing your time with me today. It's really appreciated. And for everyone out there who listens, thank you for sharing your story. And we hope you all out there stay safe and keep playing games and keep connecting with the world out there. And remember, everyone, that no matter what else, remember to hit save. It's very important.
Yeah, I think it's really, what we learn from video games is that video games present you with a set of tools which through your own ingenuity you learn to use in the way that you express yourself, through jumping, through grappling, through fighting and the different fighting combinations, learning how to be resourceful, learning how to best use the resources that you've got to overcome the challenge in front of you that's been designed for you to overcome. And so we learn, just as we learn to reach our higher potential in our mastery of the game's mechanics, we also learn how to reach our own higher potential, right? Because real life is it's a giant video game, and every single one of us, no matter who you are, has a higher potential. You have a gift to give to the world to make it a better place. And we all exist in a world in which lots of other people, they live their life in service of making the world a better place for us and giving us playgrounds, giving us schools, giving us video games and movies and anime that would inspire us. And you, every single individual, has a higher potential to achieve, and don't let anyone hold you back from it. Push forward, keep pressing continue, and become a Super Saiyan. Yeah. You've got to become a Super Saiyan.
I can't beat those words of wisdom. So on that nugget of wisdom, let's head off into the sunset, and we'll see you next time, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care, guys.
This show was brought to you by me, Ziggy Chris. So thanks very much for listening. You know how to do podcast things by now, so if you liked this, push the button, tell your friends, do all that jazz, and we'll see you next time. Take care.